Hey, welcome. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life, along with some other podcasts. But today we have Brian Johnson, city manager, and this is Prime Lunchtime with Brian Johnson, the city manager of Peachtree Corners. Hey, Brian.
Rico, how are you?
Good. It's been a while. We haven't done this since probably, I think it's been since November.
That's correct.
And I'm glad that we're able to start the new year off in January instead of February.
Yeah, I mean, but outside it's certainly January out there.
Yes, it's the howling winds at night. It's amazing what's going on out there. But there's a lot going on in the city and a lot to talk about this hour. I think we're going to pack it up with a lot of stuff. And I'd like to lead it off actually with the first thing. I'd like to lead it off with talking about this big announcement that happened. That will be the cover story of my new magazine called Peachtree Corners Magazine.
Well, before we get into that, I mean, I would like to say that the city is definitely excited about your new publication.
You guys put out a press release. I appreciate you doing that, too.
Yes, I mean, we're excited because, our responsibility as it relates to communicating with our, citizenry tends to have us producing very factual, very formal type
right.
of narrative, which, while important, we're not necessarily experts, nor are we really interested in the entertainment aspect.
Right.
However, as readers and residents like we both are, I very much enjoy reading something that also entertains me. So we're excited about you doing something that brings the expertise of somebody who knows how to entertain a little bit more, being a little less maybe stuffy and, a little bit less governmental and,
right.
But talk about stories that mean something to those of us who either live, work, and or play here in Peachtree Corners.
It's amazing. And thanks for, let's talk about that a little bit because when I first decided to do this, I thought, the city could use it, but I wasn't sure if the city could support it
right.
as far as the business community, the revenue a publication like this needs. I mean, it needs money to be able to print, to mail. I mean, we're tasked now because the city has been able to commit to being an editorial advertising part
right.
of this, that there's going to be 5 pages unique in the publication, every issue that is totally about from the City of Peachtree Corners official news, and that section of the publication looks good, I believe, and is a bit different than the rest of the publication, which is soft feature stuff. But I've been surprised about the amount of excitement. And if someone's excited about the magazine, I'm like, really? That's great. And we're getting a lot of people excited by it, not just businesses, but local people excited to have a Peachtree Corners magazine. Well,
if you think about what gets people fired up, you oftentimes think about things like, sports teams or, your alma mater or, some group in which you can identify with, but you have some sort of an investment in, a sense of pride. And so it kind of gets your, you kind of get your emotions up and, which is why you have fandom and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that we oftentimes forget is, one of the areas of our life that we really have the most real investment in is the community that we're a part of. I mean, if there is ever that group that you feel this, this sense of loyalty and camaraderie with other people, it's where you could either, live or work or play or all of them, where your kids could be at, where you could have grown. And, so that community and that sense of pride when you like where you live, I think is coming out when people are hearing about this and it's going to be about Street Corner. They kind of thump their chest like, this is our community and you're going to do it. And they kind of feel that, like you do at your sports team or your alma mater where you're like,
Yeah, and it's I have a contributing editor, Kathy Dean, very experienced writer and editor. The cover story is written by a former AJC writer and editor, Donna Davis. And a couple of other stories been written from writers, editors that are experienced in the field through the either AJC or regional newspapers, and they are amazed sometimes. So Donna's totally amazed about the stuff going on here technology-wise. She wrote the cover story. Joe Earl, another veteran writer of major newspapers, an editor, wrote a story about retirement, and he's just like, these people love Peachtree Corners. I mean, that's all he was hearing, that they love Peachtree Corners. And he's, to see these writers talk about that, and he's like, I've never seen a place like this. It's really funny. And they're veterans. It's not like, they're just starting up here. These guys have been in the industry 20, 30 years.
I mean, you think about somebody who likes, say, the Atlanta Falcons, almost without exception, it's somebody who has no, direct correlation with the Falcons as far as a former player or former executive. Right. That became their team, but they'll get fired up. But when you add stuff like you own property in a community, or your kids go to school there, or your job is there, or your friends, now it starts to get real. Yeah. There's a connection, and people get excited about it, and it's great that we've got something where somebody can read about or contribute to stories about that thing that makes them proud.
Correct, and we're getting a lot of feedback. So we're going to be the magazine, just to let people know, is covering everything about the city, mostly everything that's in the city, and sometimes around the city and outside the city. So just because people have asked me, are you going to provide information of what families could do with their kids?
Right.
Yes, there are things that you could do in the city, and there's also, like, my son's doing fencing up in Johns Creek, and that's the only place you could do it. So yes, so things like that on the outside, maybe Fernbank, maybe High Museum, is stuff like that, because they come out with they have a new exhibit that's coming out at the High. That's exciting. But so we'll be covering things like that, but stuff that's going on in the city. Education. You have kids are going to Norcross High School, Paul Duke STEM High School. They're going to Duluth High School. So we're going to be covering things about the schools, things about the students, achievements, teachers, nonprofits, churches, business, restaurants and entertainment, the events that'll be going on in the city. My daughter and I did a Daddy-Daughter Day a couple of weekends ago to do the cocktail feature that we have in there. So we went around to different restaurants. Me and her shared some cocktails and took some pictures, and it was a good Daddy-Daughter Day.
Sure.
And she's like 21, and she's posting it on social media and her Instagram, and her friends are wondering, are you okay? You're like at 5 different bars. But it was neat. And, finding out these businesses, some of them I have never gone in, even though I've lived here since 95, is quite compelling. And so I'm hoping also compelling stories will be coming out. And we're also playing around with some feature ideas that will, I think, be really good for this city about how we're going to do some stuff. But I'm excited.
Yeah, we are too. We are too.
Cool. So having said that, this cover story is about what we're going to talk about a little bit, because Sprint announced something at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Yeah, so, I've alluded to this a little bit, and I couldn't name it or get into details because of the non-disclosure agreement we've signed. But as part of our intelligent mobility effort right outside of this building right here on the 1.5 mile long stretch of Technology Parkway that we have decided to invest in as an economic development effort.
Right.
As part of our Innovation Hub Master Plan into Tech Park, and that is, to create what is essentially a transportation laboratory for intelligent mobility research and development.
Now, that transitioned a little bit, because originally it was just intelligent mobility, but now it becomes a laboratory for a whole bunch of things.
That's exactly right. And, it's interesting how it has very much evolved in what we think is a good way, but it ultimately started as almost a transit, a local kind of transit option to see if we could come up with a need for local people within Peachtree Corners to get them off of 141, Peachtree Parkway.
Right.
And there is a need for that, but there's only one need, and that would be for the 1,000+ hotel rooms that are down in the Hilton Marriott area at the south end of Technology Park. connecting those occupants of those hotels there up with our town center and the Forum. So there is a use base there because, especially between Sunday and Thursday night, our business traffic in those hotels is very healthy.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
And so, a lot of those people are here on business, but in the evening they have a little bit of a time. And, so we were thinking maybe we could, get some people, even one person off of 141 is just,
that was the original thinking.
That was the original thinking. And, Councilman Alex Wright was the, really big push for that. And, and over time, to spare you the gory details, we have evolved from it being transit, which we still want that component to be a part of it. But the first phase gets us about halfway between those locations.
Okay.
And it went from transit to more of an economic development, which is, okay, we can still do something. It may not be for the purpose of moving people from point A to point B. Maybe it's actually for there to be research and development on advanced vehicle stuff that one day could be used to move people from point A to point B. And we started out thinking we would invest in a smart car, but yet the corridor and the track would be dumb. It would just be this stretch of road that doesn't have anything special on it, and then we invest into the vehicle or vehicles and do like
that was the original,
almost, yes.
And then, but it evolved into almost creating a Disney-esque type.
Well,
place,
and then it flipped to where the industry, as we got into the due diligence before we spent the money. We found that the industry is like, look, one day all the technology for advanced vehicles, all the way up to level 5 autonomous, where there's no human in the vehicle at all, certainly all the technology in those vehicles will one day be on the vehicle. But we're years and years away from that level of autonomy. And in the meantime, what they need, what the industry needs, are locations for them to test things that are in between what we currently drive right now and level 5 autonomy. So that means that the corridor that they need to test in needs to be smart because they need to be able to test. So it's evolved. So, for instance, good examples of that would be like the vehicle, it's called V2X, vehicle to everything communication. And at some point in the not too distant future, you are going to have, in a transportation environment, you're going to have basically everything talking to everything. You're going to have the vehicle itself talking to other vehicles that it passes or interacts. Right. Vehicle's going to talk to the infrastructure. It's going to talk to the light poles. Right. The light poles will tell the traffic signal up the road that there's cars coming and maybe it needs to cycle through traffic. It'll talk to pedestrians on the sidewalk that have smartphones. It'll talk to reflectors in the road, lights, it's dimming and bright. Everything is talking to everything, and there's a need for that kind of stuff. So we just started getting into, okay, if we put in infrastructure, conduit, or certain poles in certain areas, and then we got to the point where we realized that for us, for this corridor to truly be at the top and a preeminent testing and research and even demonstration site, we needed to have the bandwidth to handle all of that.
That's right. That's where Sprint came in.
And that's where 5G came in.
5G.
Yes. Okay. And so we knew that for us to really be at the cutting edge, we needed to have the bandwidth that is going to be required to have all this stuff. So, 5G is on a spectrum that just offers just a lot more capacity. Really a lot more capacity than 4G LTE. Right. And you have to have that if you think about everything talking to everything. There's just so much communication. And so Sprint, we started talking with Sprint, and Sprint was very interested, very impressed with what we were doing, and definitely wanted to be a partner in this. And so they saw the benefit both to being able to deploy their 5G and for purposes that we want. But also, you got to remember that while the 5G, capabilities are out there and they're being deployed starting right now. Slowly. Right, they're starting to do that. What we don't have, and we can think back not too long ago and come up with examples, is the ability for these kind of things to use that spectrum.
That's right. Yeah.
And, you don't have to think too far in the past, where I remember having a cell phone, and it had 3G, and then for a period of time when 4G was being deployed, you would see at the top of your phone when you got into really mostly, more urban areas that had better technology, it would flip to 4G. And I remember thinking, ooh, it's going to be faster for me, because that device was able to flip between 3G and 4G spectrums as it was And then, remember, not too long ago, you had 4G and then 4G LTE, which was even faster. And so the next step is for phones or other devices, whether it be cars or
to step up to
home security system, whatever, to step up from 4G LTE into the 5G spectrum. So that testing on the end user applications still has to happen. Those original equipment manufacturers of things like phones or automobiles are going to have to get with the telecommunication companies and do that testing to make sure that they've got all the 5G stuff working in there. So Sprint is going to, in addition to us offering up for, vehicle testing or even smart city technology testing, Sprint's going to end up using this as an opportunity for them to get with some of their, vendors and partners and test getting their 5G into. So it's really becoming a real living laboratory.
And this is why they're calling it their patented or trademarked Curiosity Lab.
So what we did is Sprint has a trademark term for their Internet of Things. And, for those who don't know, that IoT or Internet of Things is essentially the term that's used for that environment where basically everything is talking to everything.
Like a Nest thermostat or your Ring doorbell or...
I mean, you can go into a house and now you can really have almost everything. You can have your house security system, your climate control, your door locks, your appliances, your televisions, your smartphones are all talking to each other. And that's the Internet of Things, everything. And so they trademarked the term Curiosity as their term for their Internet of Things. So because we're creating this environment with their 5G, the official name of our laboratory now is the Curiosity Lab at Peachtree Corners. And so we are officially, partnered with them.
And this is the only one, I think this is the only place in the country that's doing this.
We do not know of any others. I always hate to be super definitive, but we are not aware of anywhere else in which you have what I guess you would consider a good example of a living laboratory. And by that I mean this. There's generally two extremes when it comes to an environment that somebody can test and get ready for something to be commercially available on the market. There's the closed locations, like a closed driving course. That, it's sanitized from interaction with the public. It's closed. You can do everything you want with it. There's that. There's plenty of those. That's one extreme. The other extreme would be for somebody to feel like they can drop this emerging technology into a really complicated environment. Like North Avenue in downtown Atlanta. It's a really complicated, urban, congested environment. That's really hard to do if your technology is
just testing out.
And so there needed to be maybe a sweet medium in between, the crawl before the run. It's kind of the walk phase, as we like to say, and that is if somebody's got technology that's working in a closed course and they're like, okay, we can crawl, now we need to walk, where would you do it? This is an example where we'll have all the infrastructure for somebody to come in and do everything from hanging certain sensors somewhere, tweaking traffic signals, doing whatever they need to do to test. But it does have interaction with the
Cars,
real human
people.
Motoring public or pedestrians. In some cases, in a more controlled environment and in a not too complicated one that you start losing control of the environment you want to test. So Technology Park, we thought initially this was the case, and our research has confirmed it, is really intriguing to companies that are good on the closed course, but they're not quite ready for the
this gives
complicated
them enough
one.
Traffic, enough interaction to be able to do this. And it's not just It's interesting when I was reading through the press release and, of course, the feature article we're writing that we've written talks about AI, talks about IoT, talks about the broader range of the use. When people think of this, they think of just mobility in a car. But like you said, I mean, it's way more than that can be experimented on this. Even if it's just a smartphone or the charging of vehicles on the track. I mean, it could be anything, really, that anyone wants to come to plug in to say, let's do this way.
Some of the examples I'm about to tell you are merely are only examples because they're not locked in, but they are examples of something in which a company has said, we'd like to have another conversation about doing something. Okay. Everything from putting electric coils in sections of the road and testing whether or not those coils can charge electric vehicles driving over top of them.
Okay.
Things like, or drone.
Drone, that was the other thing.
Drone. So it's not just necessarily, rubber-tired vehicles. There has been some interest in doing some research and development on drone of packages or even food. Maybe we can set it up to where some of the tenants of Tech Park could be part of a pilot program in which you could end up having your lunch delivered through drone.
So let me ask you that 5G part then, because that 5G availability and bandwidth isn't just along.
No, it is not.
Maybe someone would say,
it's all of Tech Park.
It's all of Tech Park.
Yeah, because remember, it's wireless. So it's not like you can, create a boundary or build a wall, to borrow a term that we're hearing right now. You can't just isolate it to one. So when they set it up, it's emanating to where the part of Tech Park that's, east of 141, the original Tech Park, because it does go on the other side too. That's the one that pretty much all of Tech Park is going to have 5G within the next 60 days. 60 days.
And there's probably overflow because it's a concentric circle.
Correct.
So there'll be overflow into other parts just to make sure you're capturing all of Tech Park, I guess.
Well, and we're sitting in, Prototype Prime, the tech incubator here.
Yeah.
Sprint is also part of our partnership is for them to have their IoT experts at certain times of day to be here to work with our companies who are wanting to use 5G in the technology that they're creating here. So they're at the leading edge of being able to take their applications and get experts with Sprint and get it to where it is using 5G right here at Prototype Prime.
So is it also closed to only those people that are given access to it, or is the 5G available to almost any company in Tech Park even?
No, it will be involved. It'll be available for everybody in Tech Park.
Okay.
But again, at the early stages, I think you're going to, because it exists, but devices don't necessarily have the ability to utilize it.
Certainly.
That's where Sprint's going to have to come in and actually get with some of those.
Right. I mean, the infrastructure has to be there for these other things to come.
That's correct.
So it is, in a way, it is, you have to build it and then they will come because, I mean, that in essence, that's what that's about. But I mean, that's an attractive point to anyone that wants to come to Tech Park outside of the incubator, for example.
Hence the whole economic development component to this initiative of ours. I mean, we do an Innovation Hub master plan. It comes out with, the purpose of it was what else can we do to really help re-energize, reimagine the original technology park for Metro Atlanta? I
mean, this would be great. What other tech park, what other place has this type of thing going on?
Not here in the Metro Atlanta, absolutely nobody else. But, there have been a bunch of technology hubs in Metro Atlanta that have been built since Tech Park Atlanta was built. Right. And so it was time for us to look at, doing, giving a little bit more attention to Tech Park, Atlanta.
And the 5G adds that great benefit.
Well, it does. I mean, so we started the Innovation Hub Master Plan, gave us a bunch of ideas. Prototype Prime's existence and having a job creator was one of them that we've done. Millennial Housing, Echo Lakeside is part of that. Multi-use trails, those are part of the plan. But the other part was coming up with some sort of almost like a thematic use within here that might end up generating kind of a symbiotic relationship amongst different locations within Tech Park. And so us using smart city and intelligent mobility, testing and research and all that kind of stuff, we hope will ultimately get to where some of the vacancy or turnover in some of the buildings here gets filled by companies that are in this ecosystem.
Right.
And at some point, we end up having a technology park that has a specific theme to it. Huh. There are other examples of that, biomedical tech parks, that all the companies are biomedical oriented. Right. We think we have a shot at creating that here, and it's certainly the buzz. We'll be the first location in Metro Atlanta outside of the temporary setup for the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
They are setting up a 5G one, so that one will be, of course, live in about 2 weeks. But beyond that, we're going to be in the first wave of permanent 5G for Metro Atlanta. So just our test track, our laboratory environment, just that initiative, we haven't even started construction yet, was enough for us to be the first permanent 5G system set up in Metro Atlanta.
That's exciting.
So it's economic development.
Yeah,
it's working.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So I don't know that's like the biggest thing that we could talk about.
Yeah, it's tough to follow. It's exciting. For us to be so. Sprint invited us out to make the announcement at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Yeah.
And, it's a big deal out there. There's a lot of, over 180,000 participants in that convention.
And everyone's vying to do this 5. And there are 5G wannabes that are like 5G capable, or they're 5G limited, or there's other companies that are saying they're 5G that are not quite there yet, that they're not 5G yet.
But we were excited. So we've got a number of other partnerships that are going to be announced here soon also.
Really? Okay.
And so we've got some other big names that have expressed interest, and we've been trading documents to get to the point where we can talk about that too. So it's picking up steam.
I can't wait to talk about those things. Heading down that technology part, we're doing the GT Georgia Tech Coding Camp started. And I think they're full and sold out at this point, is what I understood.
Oh, they are. There was such a demand that Georgia Tech's very pleased. We had to cap the class size.
Right.
Now there's a waiting list for the fall one that they want to do.
Okay.
And they have asked us if we are interested in letting them fill 3 more nights. Because it's like, first one is, I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday.
Right.
And they have asked if in the fall they can not only do that, but then also do another one on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Really? So there is some demand up in North Metro Atlanta for this kind of thing, and not having to go all the way down into Midtown, to do this. So we're very pleased. Georgia Tech's very pleased with our partnership. And so, upstairs starting Monday night, is going to be the very first class for this series of.
And on top of that, I think there's going to be a coding camp for kids.
There is.
Right? That's going to be here at Prototype Prime.
Over the summer. So, we, and I'm sure you'll get some information for the second issue that you've got. But we are blessed up here in, the Peachtree Corners area with, and I know this because I have, 2 kids in elementary school. We have a lot of opportunity during the summer.
Right.
My wife and I are essentially like it's process of elimination because there's so many things that kids could do.
Right.
But the kids here are really active, and one of the things that there's been a demand is to do a coding, a coding camp oriented to kids in the elementary, middle, and high school. So they have different, I guess, levels. But it's called Coding for Kids.
Right.
And we have reached an agreement. And so this summer they're going to be holding a camp here.
It's going to be exciting
for kids to do coding.
So kids up to, I think, high school age.
Correct.
Too. So it's not just elementary, but it's going up to high school.
Right. The one that Tech is teaching is an actual certification. You come out with a diploma or certification with Georgia Tech. Yeah, that's
But this coding summer camp stuff, I think it's for high school kids as well, or middle school kids. I forget where it goes.
I think it's even late, elementary, all the way up through high school.
Okay. All right. So that's a lot of technology stuff going on here. That's, and really, someone told me that Peachtree Corners parents spend more than willing to spend money on camps and anything related to their kids, sports and all that. More so there than maybe going out on an evening. Which is kind of interesting, but this is this is what it's about. You have a family, and that's what you want to do. Now, talking about going out and being out there, we visited Firebird's Wood Fired Grill. Mm-hmm. Great restaurant, great drinks. There's the Black Diamond drink. I like actually. I
like the way that their bar looked. I mean, that's a
beautiful bar.
Holy cow!
The fire.
I told my wife that's the standard for our bar at home, and that's what I want to look like.
A two-story.
I got $100,000 worth of liquor on that thing. That was impressive.
Colorful. It's the cascading waterfall of drinks.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Yes, and I like the Firebird above the fireplace.
Yes.
Actually, that was kind of cool. So, and I met Dante. I think Dante is his name, the chef at that. So one of the ideas we had was that we're going to do a series of stories on the chefs of the restaurants in the city of Peachtree Corners. But there's a lot of places opening up in town center. Mm-hmm. Some of them are already opened. We have our First Watch, which is a breakfast lunch, Firebirds, dinner all weekend and all night. I don't know if there was a coffee place that's opened. Revelator. So there's a bunch of places like that. There's also Hollywood Feed, which is a pet shop with food and all sorts of other things related to your pets. And there's a few more things that's going to be opening, but they're moving along. How far? They did the Veterans Monument is being built, mm-hmm. So that's in the midst of being built. Is the deck finished? The deck is almost
no, it's not quite finished. We're into punch list stuff.
Okay.
So there's those last minute things that you've got to do, and in some cases you end up having the topography is such that you didn't realize that there was there's a fall hazard for small children, so we need to come out and put in a railing at a little section here, and just little things.
Sure.
The rain. There's been a few places where it's not draining the way we want, so it's pretty typical stuff on a new construction, especially something that big, especially something that's happened when we've had such a wet year.
Yeah.
It has made it difficult out there. The site is a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. In fact, we had to postpone our town green grand opening from the end of March to the end of April just because the contractors had so much rain.
Yeah, it's almost rained every weekend except for 2 in the last 6
And
months.
in December, it was just really, and remember, it's not like they can't do it just while it's raining. They actually have to wait a period of time for it to dry out.
Yeah.
And, so you could have a good rain, good soaking,
mm-hmm.
and then you could go 2-3 days and about ready when it's dry enough, it does it again, and then you've got to start all over.
Well, it's the same thing when you're building. So Lazy Dog is building their.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the steel that's going up right now.
So that's Lazy Dog.
That's
right
Lazy
there.
Dog.
So Lazy Dog's a restaurant that's pet friendly.
It's a restaurant. That's correct. It comes out of, I think it's Wyoming.
I think so, yeah.
But yes, it is unique in that it has an outdoor. Some people are like, oh, it's indoor. But it has a special outdoor area specifically for dogs in which they have a menu specifically for dogs. And so, yes.
No cats, which is dogs.
Right. That outside area will be right there at the base of the pedestrian bridge.
Oh, okay.
So they'll be right there together. And so, that's the steel that you see going up right now is for Lazy Dog. And then between that and the main entrance, the town center drive there will be the last building will actually have 2 tenants in it. One is an Xfinity store.
Oh, really? Comcast, Xfinity. Okay.
Correct. I mean, and where they sell, the phones and other that kind of stuff. And then the other one is Uncle Jack's Meat House.
Uncle Jack's Meat House, really? Huh.
Which is a very, very high-end steak. I think they have a location in Alpharetta or Roswell. There's another location in North Metro Atlanta.
And then Marlowe's is on track at some point to open in February?
Yes, I do believe so. Late February, I think.
Okay. And I think
And then Cinebistro is March-ish.
Okay. That's what I heard.
The theater.
Been talking with the marketing people a little bit, and they were saying that that's going to be out that way. Can't wait for that to be done. So everything's coming along a little slower, maybe, but everything seems to be coming along well over there.
Yeah, I mean, we're progressing as fast as Mother Nature lets us. But
and any new clients, stores coming in that might not have been on the recent list?
Other than the Xfinity and Uncle Jack's Meat House, those would be the two, and especially since that's the corner building right there at 141 and Town Center Drive. So that one would be, one that, because we've had a lot of people like, well, you still have one. So the rest of it, I think that there might be one or two space does not have a tenant locked in yet.
That's still open.
That's still open. I mean, it will be finished on the exterior. It just doesn't have a tenant, but that's what the developer Fuquay is. That's kind of their responsibility. So. And
I see Georgia Clinic. They're finally building. They started the building, the concrete building.
That is correct. They're going in between Chase Bank and Black Walnut.
Right. So that's going. So everything's moving along that way. Now the back of the house, if you will, the boutique hotel possibly and the apartment buildings. Is that, I heard something about at some point there's an expiration on something like that?
Well, that one he has a certain amount of time to start, or else it reverts back to the original zoning.
So when does that expire? I thought it was in 30 days or 60 days?
No. He had 3 years to actually turn dirt.
All right. So someone had said that. I was like, I don't think so.
Oh, no.
So he has 3 years, and that's only been, not even, has it been a year already?
I don't even think it's been quite a year.
Hasn't. All right, so have you heard anything more about that?
Yeah, I mean, the owner of the property, they're in their due diligence. It's really no different. Right around that same time, Fiserv was doing the same thing. So what they do is, they come into the city, they submit, a conceptual master plan, enough for the city to be able to say, yes, we'll approve it, and we'll make whatever, we'll change whatever zoning or land use requirements we have on the parcel so that you can build this thing that you showed us. But the developer can't necessarily get all of the details ironed out beforehand, because if it's a no, you didn't want to spend, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars for engineers and architects to design something only to have a zoning rezoning.
So are they like close to?
Fiserv could be. That's it's pushing 1,000 units.
Yeah.
That probably was 2 years from when they got rezoned before they'll actually start building something.
Okay.
Because they've got to not only do the plans, they've still got some regulatory stuff they got to go through. They're in the river corridor.
Right.
They got to line up financing. A lot of people don't realize these things are not, they haven't lined up the financing before they do the rezoning.
They've got no. They could have started right away.
So then you got to go out and then get the money, through whatever means. Sometimes it's got to be phased in to where you're only going to do X amount of units to begin with, and then after that, the bank may then free up more based on your sales of the first.
They want to see revenue coming in.
Yeah, it's complicated, so it takes time. So both of those could be 2 to 3 years easily.
So before we see anything on those, could be at least another year or so.
Sure.
Because it's already been a little time, but or they might even get sold.
Absolutely
possible. With that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything new on the Arts Council as far as any thought about I haven't heard anything much from there about anything new out of there.
Well, they've been working on a couple things lately. One, they came out with a master plan when it comes to public art, in which they kind of looked at the city as a whole and came up with locations in which we might be able to actually, showcase public art in some cases.
So that's in a master plan right now.
It is, and so they've been, talking through where those locations could be and what criteria could be used as to what goes where, including the town center. So there's been work on that. They're currently talking about maybe, providing council some recommendations on a brand of some sort for the town center, logo or some sort of a, So they've been working on some stuff still.
Neat. Had some discussions with some people about MARTA and the referendum that's coming up in March.
Yep.
So, of course, there's the pros and the cons on it. And one of the discussions I had with someone was that, if we're really talking about transit, most people think
That's
it's just
correct.
Just a train, they're thinking, but it's not just the heavy rail, which...
In fact, that'll be the least of all of the
expense on it.
Yep.
In fact, I think the county retains, 78% of the revenue generated by this MARTA referendum, and it would be mainly transit type stuff. And someone brought up the idea of, that could be where maybe the old Outback restaurant was, that shopping center where Dunkin' Donuts on Holcomb Bridge Road.
Spalding and Holcomb Bridge.
Correct. That maybe that could be a transit center, leading up into either Fulton County or going the other way into Roswell and Alpharetta. That could be a place for it that could revitalize that area.
It could. Now, the complication there is a couple things. One is, A, we don't know if Gwinnett is going to pass the referendum.
Correct.
So
right.
but let's assume that Gwinnett does.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got to take the Gwinnett Transit Master Plan and integrate it with the DeKalb County Transit Master Plan and the North Fulton Master Plan.
Okay.
Because that location is actually, the corner, the Publix that's on the corner of Spalding and Holcomb Bridge.
Yes. Uh-huh.
On that intersection that's actually in Fulton County, Sandy Springs.
Yeah. Sandy Springs, and most people don't realize that.
We border Sandy Springs there, so that's not only right next to Sandy Springs, but if you take Spalding up to Winter's Chapel.
Right. You're in Fulton, I think?
You're in DeKalb now. Dunwoody.
Okay, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So you've got two other counties' transit plans that would have to get, integrated into to make sure that the top of the perimeter was working. And so it could, but you've got to you're going to have to incorporate other master plans and look
to make sure there's no
and so
repetition.
I'm not sure, depending on where the next transit hub is, it may work out great.
Or it
may not.
Sure.
It could be. So, but it's certainly an option, and it is positioned pretty well when we all know that getting across the north end of the perimeter is not going to be in heavy rail. It will be in some sort of the best case would be a bus rapid transit option where, it's a dedicated lane just for buses.
And that's what it sounds like, because if it's not a dedicated lane, it almost makes no sense. You're still stuck in traffic.
That's correct. If I'm going to be stuck in traffic, I would just as soon be in my own car listening to my own music or on the phone or whatever, hands-free on the phone.
Hands-free, there you go.
Then in a
Don't
bus.
touch the phone.
Then in a bus.
Yeah.
So,
But if you're a dedicated lane and you're going, and it's almost, I almost think of it like, because it's not just local travel, it's going from the city, picking up that last leg of miles and stuff, where I keep thinking of like Long Island Railroad, going out to Long Island, Suffolk County, Nassau. If anyone's from New York, you might be aware of that, where it's a better, it's a train, granted, but it could be buses, like we used to get the coach bus into the city. Nice buses, and they just, they didn't have dedicated lanes at that point, but it almost felt like to me this could be a reasonable way for people to get comfortably and safely to work and home and to the next MARTA stop.
MARTA, or all the way in. If you think if it's got its own lane and it's only, it's only limited by the other bus rapid transit, providers, which can't be a lot, you could basically be moving at a really good clip all the way in while you look out your window and see the rest of us
or watch a Netflix movie
in the cars, seething like we usually do.
There you go. You could be binging or something. So that's cool. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and still waiting on that because March, I forget what date, but
I don't remember either. It is in March.
That referendum is going to be the only thing on the ballot. That's going to be at your normal precincts, I think.
City will not have its own. It's a county vote,
right,
so it will not
vote.
be City Hall will not be
The place.
a location. That's
it's
correct.
Your normal precincts, I think.
It would be your normal precinct for county election.
For county elections,
Yep.
right. So that's where you'd have to go, and that's easy because it's better than just going to. And I don't know if there's early elections or not, but there's definitely meetings going on throughout the county, actually, about the.
In fact, there was an article in AJC today, I believe, that it listed all the upcoming public meetings related to.
And I'll be posting that on our website as well.
And there's a bunch of them close here. There's going to be one in Pinckneyville Park.
Right. Yeah.
Norcross City Hall, I think, is another location that they've.
So if you have questions, that's the place to go, because it is a big important thing.
It is
that commits quite a bit of money, quite a bit of time and effort, and will change the face of the county to some degree. First time in history that this county will have mass transit of that nature coming into the county or expanding into the county. The roundabout started too, right? You guys are knocking trees down and moving things around.
Unfortunately, we had to remove a few trees. Yes, I mean, the nature of the business. Yes, right. But yes, it is happening, and so again, we feel like an intersection in which traffic is not supposed to ever come to a complete stop. You're really supposed to just be slowing down and merging in with others. We think it'll be overall the better option between that and a signal. And so we're excited about that. It'll be in time for most of when the town center opens fully. It'll be because we still have about 75 townhomes.
Yes,
that are going in. Yes, on Medlock itself, and so that we want the roundabout to be done when that's done, and it's on track. And then the Bush Road, Medlock Bridge intersection.
That's right.
With the slip lane. That's moving along. We're not too far away from having final plans done, and we'll bid it out.
That's going to be really good that way. Yeah,
I agree. So those who want to get onto 141. Headed north into Johns Creek from Bush Road will not have to merge onto Medlock at all.
Wow,
They'll stay over into a dedicated lane, merge onto the, call it on-ramp that you currently have there, and not even have to get in and worry about, looking left to see if they're going to be
hit or something. Yeah.
So,
anything else going on in the city that you want to share?
I guess over the holidays, the other one is some people may have seen it. There's a sign on both sides, both on 141 and Tech Park, but Racetrack is putting in a convenience store and gas station there at the intersection of 141 and Engineering Drive.
Okay.
And so Engineering Drive, which now is only on the west side of 141 if you're headed north, will actually go across, and it will link up into Tech Park. So it'll become a full, essentially a four-lane or a four-way intersection.
Traffic light and all that, I guess.
Traffic light there.
Right.
And so a racetrack will be going in, and probably, I guess, for those of us who live in the area, the significant thing there would be, currently, if you want to have a right in, right out to a gas station on your way home, on the direction most people are traveling on their way home, which is north.
Right.
There is nothing north of 285 on the right side until you get up into State Bridge Road, north of State Bridge Road in Johns Creek. So if you needed gas,
that'd be the place to go now.
You wouldn't, you have to, go to the west side of the road, like the Quick Trip, that Peachtree Corners Circle. And those of us who have been there, a lot of pumps, great place. But if you got to turn left into there and then get back out going north, you're sitting through multiple lights. And so this will allow an opportunity for a right in, right out gas option. For the majority of. So that's probably the only reason why they're willing to do it, because it is not an easy site to develop. If you ever look at it, it's got one part of this site is a big hole, and the other part is a hill. So they're going to have to move a lot of the hill into the hole, and it's a lot of work. But again, I mean, there's no other options, like that. You want to be right in, right out for people going home in the evening for those kind of things.
Yeah. It's always a debate whether I should make that turn or not to be able to go to the gas station.
Yeah.
So
Same with me.
Yeah, I get that, and especially when traffic is going the way it's going. Sometimes you don't want to be bothered and then having to wait another 5-10 minutes sometimes. So I get that. That's cool.
So that would be the ones that are, really, I guess, a change since we last talked. I mean, we've got different stuff that's still going on, multiple townhome, locations that are still underway.
Right.
But...
and Earth Fair, that old Earth Fair shopping center, anything new there as far as that went? No, nothing.
Earth Fair still holds the lease.
Okay.
But we do know they're still talking to sublease opportunities, but we don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, there's just so much going on. I want to thank Brian for coming.
Thanks for having me.
He does this every month when we do this every month, so this is cool. If you find this on demand, as you probably will, or downloading the podcast on iTunes or iHeartRadio, just let me know. Just leave a review or let me know what topics you'd like to discuss. You could always find that when this is live by liking our Facebook page. And I want to say thank you to Prototype Prime here in the city of Peachtree Corners for giving us their podcast studio once a month, twice a month sometimes. We're working on the Ed Hour, which is our educational podcast with my co-host Alan Kaplan. We're going to be doing that, I believe, next week. And that'll be a Facebook Live as well. So we're working on guests. But I want to thank Prototype for giving us this place.
And remind everybody that, we'll also take live questions.
Yes.
Or even ones that somebody submits to you ahead of time.
Right. That's the best way to do it, actually, at this point. Although I will have an intern, I believe, from Paul Duke STEM High School that will be working with me on some of these podcasts that are after 2:30, though, is the thing, because they have to go to school.
Sure.
Which is kind of neat because that gives them exposure to what we're doing and stuff. But so if you do have pressing questions, email them to me at rico@peachtreecornerslife.com or post them to our page in any of these comments related to this podcast, and I'll make sure that we put it up for the next one. And at some point, you can even tweet me. During the show, I've been checking my iPhone if that's why you see me looking down.
Or when you advertise it's upcoming, they can say, all right, when Brian's on there, ask him this.
Correct. So like the Facebook page for Peachtree Corners Life, you'll know when this goes live on Facebook, and you'll be able to do that with us. So thank you, guys. Peachtree Corners Magazine will be out in the mailboxes, I believe, the first week of February, the end of that week. Should hit every mailbox, 17,000 mailboxes in the city, and you can find it at about 80 to 100 locations throughout the city as well. We'll have a list at some point when we finalize that. So, and of course, there's a website that goes with this, and that's livinginpeachtreecorners.com. So you could go there as well, and you'll find the digital version if you can't find the print version as well. So thanks. Appreciate you showing up. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.